Now, this project is kind of very layered and goes down quite deep. To see it all, you would have had to have been at Edinburgh Zoo for the last year and would have been able to see Rachel, Mary, Sarah Jane Vick and 21 chimpanzees working together to try and find out whether it is possible to make cinema for primates or primate cinema. We keep swapping them around. And that project was funded by the Wellcome Trust Large Arts Awards, and as well as the continued support that the Arts Catalyst gets from the Arts Council of England, and also some of Rachel's research was also funded by the Institut Méditerranéen de Recherche Artistique. I think I've got that correct, IMERA, in Marseille. What? Études quoi? Oh, études avancées, pardon. Yeah, études avancées. In other words, IMERA, which is a very interesting research institute based in Marseille. So, what we're going to start off with is very much hot off the press, and in fact, straight off the laptop, the making of Primate Cinema, brought in a taxi at great speed by Michel Degnan, who has made this. Michel, is it ready to go?
Yes, hopefully, yes.
Great, so this gives you an idea of the making of, and then we're going to fill you in with some of the details afterwards. So, take it away.
I'm kind of interested in what makes chimpanzees specific. What is it that makes them tick? But when I watch chimpanzees, I feel like I'm getting to know a very different species. But for me, I want to get a feeling for it, really imagine what chimpanzee mind is like, and then be able to stimulate it with the videos that I made.
What have you got set up there in the enclosure, because I can't see?
What we have set up in the enclosure, we have a 47-inch LCD monitor inside a chimp-proof box. And then there's a couple of speakers for sound, which seems very important. And then there's a tiny little wide-angle camera that is intended to record the chimpanzees' faces and eyes while they're watching. I've made this film in Los Angeles and bringing it here to Edinburgh to show the chimps for the first time. We knew that chimpanzees will watch television in captivity, and that television is a common form of enrichment for captive chimpanzees. And I'd heard some really interesting stories in the US media about the idea that some chimps like to watch emergency room hospital drama, and other stories about liking to watch Disney cartoons. And this is just such a bizarre idea. Dr. Sarah Jane Vick and I began last summer in June when we got a grant from the Wellcome Trust to collaborate on the project of trying to discover what kinds of videos chimpanzees prefer to watch. Okay. So let me show you what I edited last night. This is the child chimps. I don't know, like chimp attention span? Short clips are good, or are they kind of like children watching Teletubbies, like long takes?
Are you talking about like really choppy?
Yeah, quick editing, or like, I mean, this is kind of in between, it's kind of slow. Amazing.
I really like this one.
Yeah, okay.
Me and Rachel realised that we were doing similar things but from a very different perspective. So we've both been working with visual stimuli in primates. To meet an artist who was trying to do similar things but from artistic background, it was just very exciting.
I always think we just start out with these really big differences. Humans acting like humans, humans acting like chimps, chimps acting like chimps, and then we go from there.
My perspective on it is that she's the artist and she's creating a piece of art, so my role is to help her in interpreting the chimpanzee responses, but very much trust her in producing the final piece of work. And having seen her previous work, you know, I was very enthusiastic because it's so engaging and interesting.
We showed a number of different types of videos to the chimpanzees here in Edinburgh.
Well, this is going to be the TV that chimps will be watching in the research pod. And this is the camera that I'm setting up to record the chimp's reaction to the TV. And then we have the slack fabric just to reduce the amount of glare and reflection on the screen.
To do scientific research is so much different than being an artist. If I were to do this project as a scientist, I would have had to control for every factor of the video that I showed the chimpanzees.
Child chimps, what do you think? Sarah, because they might be kind of excited when they first come in.
I showed a number of different genres of different human TV shows, and then I showed a number of different chimpanzee behaviors, both looking at wild chimpanzees and captive chimpanzees, and also people dressed like chimpanzees. Okay, we're ready. We're ready.
Oh wow, they're such big animals, oh my god.
There are people who do research with chimpanzees and other primates who will do elaborate things in order to get the responses that they want. I don't want to have that type of viewing situation for this project. It's intended to be more a form of entertainment.
So this is class again? Hello. And who's that? Paul, what's going on?
Wow.
That's nothing?
They choose to come in here. It's just a sign to say that, you know, they're big, they're very important, and just to watch out for everyone else. So you don't go throughout all out without seeing all of a chimp's display. It's a very common occurrence in the wild and in Edinburgh Zoo as well.
Scratching is it stress related? Is it arousal?
High scratching would mean uncertainty. It's not necessarily a negative signal. It means they're a bit unsure about something.
We're trying to figure out chimpanzee preferences just by watching what they look at the most, what they seem to be the most attentive to. It seemed like they were responding the most to vocalizations that real chimps were making, but they were also quite interested in one of my actors taking his mask on and off. I'd like to be able to come back and kind of figure out how to understand how chimps are reacting more specifically to different types of footage. But for now, it's just really incredible that we got so much interest. And I'm glad that the zookeepers seem to think that their excitement is a positive thing.
To bring Rachel into Bedongo and have the first day go so well, it was just a real boost to our sort of enthusiasm and motivation for the project. You know, this could work. We could get some really nice footage here and do something pretty novel.
Well, they seem really pretty serene this time around. This particular program they've seen already probably 7 times, and now I'm showing it 4 more times, so they may become bored of it. I wanted to try a number of different versions with it to see whether it was the soundtrack that was interesting to them or the way it was represented visually. So it's first with chimpanzees, and then it's humans acting like chimpanzees, but dressed in ordinary human clothing. And then there's a cartoon version, and then there's this last one, which is just abstraction. It's kind of fun, like blobs, which seems to be really interesting. But hopefully it'll come back.
Well, we have an issue, obviously, in making cinema for primates. We can use people in some way, whether acting as chimpanzees or just being humans. That's obviously a lot easier than trying to compile some sort of narrative from naturally occurring chimpanzee behaviour.
I'm just going to go on to the next. They sometimes will watch when they're not actually sitting right in front of the television. I don't think that they're immersing themselves in the show in a way that human beings do. So they will glance over, they'll go into another room, and then they'll come back if they hear something interesting. That actually was a primatologist who suggested conundrums. We videotaped the chimpanzees and then synced it up afterwards so that we could actually do some form of analysis of our data. And then we saw there were kinds of reactions, like I showed chimp behavior at the Los Angeles Zoo, and we had a very elaborate chimpanzee display.
Trial period showed us that if they're in and they're oriented towards a screen, if they're in the right area, then some of the chimps are pretty much interested in anything. But some stimuli do seem to provoke responses.
And I think we came down to, unsurprisingly, sex, food, violence, and so okay, and maybe a couple of other strange things like drumming.
They're also quite interested in these fake chimpanzees that Apes has come up with. And we know from other research that, for example, rhesus monkeys are quite sensitive to monkeys that look almost like monkeys. There's this effect called the uncanny valley, where something that's close to us is a little bit disconcerting, I suppose, and captures our attention. And that seems to be the same for the chimpanzees.
That was the type of information that I used in order to make a more polished film for the chimpanzees. I went back to Los Angeles and spent some time trying to write a script that would have all these things in it, having done my market research. Recently, the documentary, The NIM Project, came out, and I had read Next of Kin, which is a story about Washoe, the chimp. Both those chimps, Nim and Washoe, were raised in human homes, and they are almost like a different species of chimp. They have human tendencies, like one of these human-raised chimps escaped from a zoo and broke into somebody's house, got food out of the refrigerator, and went and watched television. And I think also cleaned the toilet with a scrub brush.
Just to prove that
So I scripted a story that took place in the house. I worked with an actress who's about 4'8", inside a very realistic chimpanzee costume that is controlled by 2 puppeteers. Action! One who controls the muscles around her eyes and the other controlling her mouth. And they're all motorized, motors being in the back of the skull.
It's beautiful grooming! Chimps are grooming each other. You see her mother.
And so she was really the star of the film.
Now they're fighting.
So it's a story about an adolescent female chimp integrating with another community. The rest of the chimps are people who are in chimpanzee costumes with full masks on, a group of actors who I rehearsed with for a couple of weeks. But more excitement! There's sex, violence, eating. I tried to have a large cast of chimps in order to create social politics, which seems to be what chimps are interested in. Action. And then I just wanted to have some novelty in there, so there are different locations and different set designs. There's really documentary, cartoon, and drama as our kind of uber genres of cinema for chimpanzees. Okay, good.
I haven't seen the final film yet. I've had some conversations with Rachel about which direction she was going in, and I'm very excited to see it.
I'd hope to learn something about chimpanzee minds as they're watching this, but in a certain way, I think that if the chimps are happy in their environments, they'll be less interested in the television. We'll see what happens when we show them.
That's correct.
They're coming. They're totally excited. Oh, good. Oh, here's the first one who's noticed it. You really can't draw any conclusions from what other species of animals do in nature about, what is natural in human life. Steve, you have that shot. Since I've learned a bit more about the field of primatology, I see that there's all sorts of valid conclusions and a lot of interesting facts that are to be learned about the primates. I mean, at this point, I'm interested in how each primate species has its own particular way of behaving. And so I think that idea of saying that we're just like animals is kind of just as false as saying that, animals are just like us. Oh, good. We have an audience member. Come on.
It's a danger to just see them as little humans. Since chimpanzees and humans split, they've evolved as well. So we're not descended from chimpanzees. They're our cousins, not our grandparents.
There's the sounds of kittens, really strange. Okay, so you can watch it from the side. Maybe they're interested in some of our human chimp vocalizations. Oh yeah, this one's really craning his head. Is he in your shot? He's craning his head, but he's watching from about 10 feet away. Wow. Oh, here's the sex scene. Keep watching. Oh, they missed it. The thing that our project is going to bring up is what type of enrichment is appropriate for captive chimpanzees. We all feel terrible that chimpanzees aren't living in the wild and aren't surviving very well in the wild. From my perspective, they seem to be excited by watching TV, and if that gives them a little break from the routine, then that would be positive. As an artwork, I think it will be interesting to see the television inside a chimpanzee enclosure and the different ways that the chimps reacted to just having something new inside their space, and potentially say something about their ability to perceive images in a similar way to us.
Thank you, Michelle, for editing that. I feel like you've already seen me talking for quite a long time, so please, yeah.
I was wondering if you could say a bit more about your position as an artist working with animals in captivity rather than in the wild, and whether you were trying to say anything about that in your work.
You know, it was extremely political. That's all right. It was very political to do this work at a zoo. I mean, it's an extremely sensitive place to work in terms of creating media and managing meaning. Zoos feel like they're under siege right now, and Edinburgh Zoo is really done. It's a model zoo for how well they treat their chimpanzees. What you get to see, just a tiny bit of, is how engaged and invested the zookeepers are about the chimpanzees. So I was privy to that world, which is, I think, very well-intended, compassionate people who work very hard to make sure that individual chimps are happy to the best of their knowledge. But you know, it was a bit bizarre to be partly part of the zoo.
Well, it's an interesting notion that only chimpanzees in captivity would be interested in TV.
Yeah.
In the way that it connects us with them.
It's true. And doesn't it reflect back on why it is that we like to watch television too? Maybe that's what you were getting at. But of course, it's a vicarious way of having a social life. Many people have talked about media as a substitute for actual social relationships. But what's really interesting, and I wish Dr. Vick were here to sort of back me up, is primatologists' theories about the origin of language and how our minds have really evolved in order to deal with the complexities of social life. The primatologist Robin Dunbar has written the gossip hypothesis of the evolution of cognition, and says that it's really the challenge of living in a group, which is why we've evolved to be able to speak to each other. And I think it underscores also our, really the gaze, the idea that we need to monitor each other constantly in order to know what's going on in a social context. So all the Facebook basics, like we monitor each other in terms of our who's friends with who, what kinds of alliances are there in this room right now, what's the Arts Catalyst very, very much for helping me in this project, and also thank you all very, very much for coming.
Thanks, Rachel, for a wonderful project.